first verse. And when they were escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita. And the barbarians people showed us no little kindness. In other words, they were good to us. They treated us nice. For they kindled a fire and received us every one because of the present rain, and because of the cold. So it was wet and cold. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, there came a viper, which is a snake, out of the heat, and fastened on his hand. And when the barbarian saw the venomous beast hang on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt this man is a murderer, whom though he hath escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffers not to live. And verse 5, and he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Verse 5 once again, and he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. And we just like to use for a thought just briefly this morning, I was bitten, but I'm healed. I was bitten, but I'm healed. If you will, turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, shake the devil off.
Shake the devil off.
Turn to your other neighbor and say, neighbor, was bitten, but I'm healed. Amen. Give God a hand praise. Look at the word this morning. We realize that many of us, and I tell folks all the time, you may be glad right now that you look back over your life and you see where you come from and what God has done for you and how God has blessed you. But I'm here to tell you today that none of us have always been where we are. We haven't always been. We may be glad now that we're singing in the choir, but you didn't always sing in the choir. You may be happy to be on the usher board. You may be happy to be on the deacon board. You may be happy to be on the mother board to serve one of the auxiliaries in the church, one of the ministry. But the truth be told, you hadn't always served the Lord. And I understand that many folks are glad that they are serving the Lord now, but sometimes we just have to be truthful about it, and we have to explain we didn't just come here out of nowhere. We got here some kind of way. And when you think about the message this morning and how Paul and things that took place in his life were so complex and so perplexed to deal with, you ask yourself the question, if God really loved me, why do I go through so many things? How can God love me and still I suffer and deal with so many things? And I'm here to tell you today that there is a message for you, whether young or old. There's a message because of the mere fact that there are some of you that have been right where Paul is in our lesson today. Paul was on a ship, and being on the ship, he realized before they even left shore that it wasn't a good, before they even docked out, it wasn't a good time. The winter time was dangerous traveling time in that part of the country. And just like some folks that don't realize that when you start going on your vacation, be careful in the fall time of year, like September, October, in places like in Florida, because hurricane season off the coast, hurricane season is more likely to happen in those seasons. So they knew the right time to sail, but they were just determined that they were leaving out, headed to Rome to take these prisoners, and Paul along with the rest of the prisoners. And when sometimes we are disobedient to God, where things are going to happen anyway. But I'm thankful today that the lesson have twofold meaning to it, because it lets us know that not only do we have to understand that we have to be about God's business, but there are times when we have to suffer for someone else's mistake. But because of the fact that we're still God's people, God takes care of his own. Now, I want you to know that three things took place this quick. Now, first of all, the shipwreck took place, and they were shipwrecked, but God saved them. They were on a strange island around native people, but God made way for them, that the people became their friends. Hospitality showed up, and now here's Paul bitten by a snake. Yes, sir. A poisonous snake, a venomous snake. And we ask ourselves the question sometimes, what does that have to do with me bitten by a snake? And And many times you look at life and look at things in life, you find out that many of us are bitten by something. There's a lot of folks walking around right now that have ill feelings because something has bitten you. Sometimes the bite may be crucial. Sometimes the bite leaves mark. But I'm here to tell you today, even though they may not be physical bite, sometimes the bites are mental bite. They mess with our mind. Things that happened when we were small. Things that happened a few days ago. Things that happened in church sometimes bites us and leaves mark. And it seems like the mark never heals. And I'll tell you one thing about being bitten is the fact that when you have been bitten, the first thing they do is seek some kind of medical attention, especially when it's a snake bite. Now some bites y'all be able to scratch off, you know, mosquito bites, if you're not alert, y'all be able to scratch off, but some bites are more serious. And I'm here to tell you today that we take small bites and make major problems out of them. And I'm here to tell you today that even in the church, sometimes our little small bites, we want everybody to give us attention for a small bite, a mosquito bite. A small bite will not harm you, but we take things and make mountains out of molehills. And here is a situation today that we face a really serious bite. Paul has been bitten by a snake. Some of you said, well, I don't see anything serious about that. I'm not afraid of the snake, but I guarantee there are more in you today that fear snakes than those who are not afraid of snakes. Matter of fact, just by me saying snake, some of you are crawling in your skin right now. Some of you are so fearful of snakes that even a picture or something on TV that shows you a snake will have you jumping over your chair and shutting your eyes. Some of you just fear the snake. So what's worse than just fearing a snake is the fear to have the snake really attack or really bite you. So some of us today, we fear things. We fear being talked about. We fear being humiliated. We fear being embarrassed. We fear being rejected. And when it happened to us, it's just like being bit by a snake. Many of us, we even fear death right now. But I come to tell you today that God has placed an antidote for us, that we don't have to fear death. Because when Jesus died on the cross, he made it possible that we didn't have to die again. He said, I come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. Now, when we talk about being bitten, sometimes a hard word can bite us and leave us feeling rough. But I'm coming to tell you today that there will be somewhere in our mind that lets us know that when it comes down to forgive and forgiving, many of us have not yet experienced that. And I tell them all the time, we Bible class, we preach about it, we teach about it, that even when it comes down to forgiving, it's not for the other person. It's for you. Amen. Because you can grow in it further if you don't learn how to forgive. If you hold on to that, and then some folks, I tell them that controls you. And they say, well, I forgive them if they ask me for forgiveness first. Well, if you got to wait on them to ask you, then they're controlling you, because you're saying, I'm not going to forgive them until they ask. So if they hadn't asked me, I'm not going to keep holding on to it. So now here we are being controlled by someone else or something else. So we're bitten. And this bite is dangerous, because if it don't get some attention, you can die from this. It'll just take you out of here, just holding bitter anger and bitter remorse and just grudge. It'll take you out of here. So here is a good example of how Paul should have been bitter, could have been bitter, because all the things that he had been through, it was things that he had not asked for. Oh yes, I've done some things I know in my life. Paul said, once upon a time, I even hated Christians, and I was going out trying to persecute and do that. But when I gave my life, when God turned me around on the road to Damascus, and I had a new leaf on life, I started preaching and I started teaching, I started telling the story about Jesus. My days should have been brighter. I feel that way, but my days became even worse on me, because every time you look around, something seriously was going wrong. Now, I understand, and you should understand today too, that just because we're saved don't mean we won't have some bad days. And don't mean some problem won't come our way. And some folk are quick to leave the church and quick to stop serving God because some situation didn't go as they thought it should have went. Didn't go as they planned. So now here we are. Paul saying it within himself, and I just speak for him right now. Now here I am. I'm doing the thing that you would have me to do now, and still I'm suffering. Still I'm going through. I was shipwrecked, and now here on an island that I don't deserve to be on, and I shouldn't be here, but I know it's not for me, it's for you, Lord. You have a reason for putting me here. And I tell folks a lot of times, even when it comes down to us, and some of the situations we find ourselves in, and you think God is punishing you, he's really using you. Amen. Amen. Because the fact that there's some people that don't know God like you know God. And by the way you carry yourself, by the way you work this situation out, by the way you allow God to use you, you may convert or have someone draw someone else to the Lord. Big, but I'm healed. Amen. Here we are, and Paul says now, I'm on this island and everything seemed to be going on. We thought we was going to be, they thought it was going to be shipwrecked. God already told me that everything was going to be all right and no one was going to lose their life. All of us going to be saved. They thought of it, but now God, you put us on this island, and even though we didn't know what the island had for us, you brought friends. You made friends out of the native people. They showed us all kind of kindness. Amen. But this island wasn't a pleasant island. It was still raining, and it was still cold. Yeah. Can you imagine? Now even me, and I love cold weather, but I can't stand to be wet and cold, not at the same time. Not at the same time, wet and cold, and this was the situation they were in right there. They was wet and cold, uncomfortable, even though they were out of the water. Still, the weather was cold. And have you ever been around a situation that you felt that same way? You felt all wet, and everything around you was all cold. Even sometime in the church house, you feel like in a cold place. I tell folks all the time, you know, if you want somebody to build a fire, then if you want somebody to get warmed up, you got to help build a fire. And I tell folks all the time now, if you want people to feel like God is in you, then you got to act like God is in you. You can't expect somebody to know that you know God when you don't show it for yourself. So down here we are, and I think sometimes that it wouldn't be a bad idea if God just put us back down into depression and in a place where we have to trust him again, because I think what happened after we got a few dollars in our pocket and a few bills paid up and caught up, we forgot what God did for us and what we need God for, and not just for our monetary reasons, not just for our material reasons, but we need him spiritually too. We need him, and sometimes we need something to show, and now we understand that all the circumstances, all the situations, the way Paul was going through, all these things happening to barbaric people, showed them kindness. These things were taking place, and now he goes to get wood for the fire. Amen. Taking things and making a turn for the back. And here comes out of nowhere a snake that hath bitten Paul. And when it bit him, the people around, because you know we got a lot of folks that's superstitious, even in the church today. If something bad happened to your church, it's because you did something bad. Job had the same situation when he fell on his bed of affliction, and when sickness came upon him and all these things that he was going through, he lost his children, lost all of his livestock, he lost his servant, and here come his friends, and folks were talking about Job. You must have done something wrong. Mother Booker, sometimes folks feel that well, you must have done something wrong. For all these things, you know, they don't even know how God works. But they want to explain to you why you're going. And matter of fact, most of them folks will tell you that they're glad. They're glad you're going through some things. But I'm here to tell you today that when God sometimes uses you, he picks on you sometimes, picks you out to be picked on by the world, but in the long run, he gets the glory from it. Now why is all these things happening and folks are standing outside and looking to, well, it's because of this, it's because they ain't right, but bottom line is sometimes God just have a reason and away. And this way, Paul had been bitten, and here come the superstitious folks, you know, and sometimes we have philosophers that can tell you better than anybody what's going on and what God is saying. And, you know, it bothers me sometimes because there's some folks that don't know nothing about God, but always think God is talking to them. God told me to tell you. Don't go to nobody's church. Don't read nobody's Bible. God's always telling them, Minister Sharon, what to tell you. And bottom line is, the God they're talking about is them. They sometimes their own God. And now here, Paul has been bitten by this snake, this poisonous snake. And the folks were already drawing a conclusion. He must have done something wrong, and God is punishing him. And he got out of the seat.